Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer. I'm your host, Sarah Bueno. I'm a psychotherapist, teacher, consultant, and most importantly, a wounded healer, living and working in Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm your host, Anne Remy. I'm a counseling psychotherapist, yoga teacher, and trauma specialist living in Brighton, UK. On this show, we interview folks in a variety of healing professions, and we discuss the intersectional journey of healing self while caring for others.
But we're not just focused on individual healing, but also healing on the collective level, from white supremacy, late-stage capitalism, and the patriarchy. Thanks for joining us. Hello, Anne.
Oh, hey, Sarah.
How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty great. I had a nice little sea swim today. How are you doing today?
Well, now that we've had all of these technical issues, I'm wanting to throw my computer out the window, and now my dogs are starting to bark. So this is just what we're dealing with today.
That's today.
Yeah. Still having laryngitis. Hopefully the next time you hear me, I won't be having it anymore, but we'll see. All right. So today's guest was really special to me. But before we do that, let's talk about ways you can support the podcast. So we've got merch, some super cute merch. If you want to buy it, you can go to tinyurl.com/CWH merch. That's CWHMERCH. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcast, which is amazing and super helpful. And you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/convos with a wounded healer for as little as $1 a month. I mean, literally, you can just give us $1 and then stop the donation after that. We greatly appreciate it. We will send you a little welcome gift if you're in the US or UK, and we appreciate you. So today, well, a million years ago, it feels like now, I spoke with Lama Rod Owens, and I was in a really weary place in the world when I met him, and talk about it right at the beginning of the interview. Like, I was weeping in front of him, and the presence that he embodies just feels so important and so crucial in a time where so many people are being persecuted for being outside of the cis white male, het standard. And he's just a divine, lovely human. What did you think?
It's funny because I heard the word Tantra and immediately I went, because Brighton is a hippie town. We've discussed this before. There's a lot of tantric workshops and stuff. And in the yoga community, Tantra is a pretty big thing. And it comes with a lot of very problematic and abusive stuff. So as soon as as soon as I hear the word Tantra, immediately I'm like, So I was like, calm down. We know Sarah's not trying to bring somebody problematic out here.
Nope.
And I was like, slow your roll, girl. Listen up. It was actually one of my favorite interviews you've ever done.
Oh,
yeah, because I was listening to him and I was just going, yeah, yeah, and was just getting so into it. So I'm really happy that you had that experience for yourself, but also that you were able to bring us into it and in some ways it was very corrective for me, just with my relationship with the word Tantra and what it evokes for me.
Awesome. Very cool. Good. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people hear Tantra and they think like tantric sex, like Sting is somehow the reference point for tantric sex in my mind. There was something with him and his wife. I don't even know. But we don't even talk about Tantra, Lama Rod and I. So actually, if I ever get to connect with him again, I'll have to ask him to kind of unpack like what Tantra is. But I mean, basically anything we know about any other cultural things from the US, we've fucked it up and misappropriated it. So like it's generally probably wrong, right?
Oh, and I mean, also the UK. Let's definitely include that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So it was really nice to kind of just hear him and hear his perspectives on like life and freedom, specifically what freedom means. And I think it felt so much more meaningful coming from a queer Black man.
Yeah.
But also to hear you talk about how freedom, how as white people, we are imprisoned by our own racist upbringing and ideas, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I had talked about with Aisha episodes ago.
Yep.
And so it was nice to have this, to hear this again, but from other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you still haven't really reconciled what spirituality really is for you, but it's interesting that, because I was thinking as you were talking about the people who I really hear liberation from, and they're all Black, and they all have some sort of like spiritual leaning, like Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams. Radical Dharma is a book by Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, and Lama Rod also was part of that. Lama Rod, Resma Menakem, even though Resma is a therapist, when he speaks, I feel like I'm in a soulful, like spiritual lecture. It's so much more. It's like, and this goes back to like a lot of white people want to check the boxes and do the cultural competency CEUs or learn how do I not be racist with my clients, but you can't unless you are willing to open your heart and do that spiritual process as well. And I think Lama Rod creates an invitation that is both spiritual, but also very grounded.
Well, and what he said, you have to be willing to break your own heart.
Yes.
And that was like, whoa.
Right.
Like when he said that, it just like hit me. And I really, really loved that. And that's what you just said.
Yeah.
But we have to actively choose to do that.
Right. Right. Well, enough of us chattering on about it. Let's introduce Lama Rod so you can hear him himself. So Lama Rod Owens is a Black Buddhist Southern queen, an international influencer with a Master of Divinity degree in Buddhist studies from Harvard Divinity School. Author of Love and Rage, The Path of Liberation Through Anger, and co-author of Radical Dharma, Talking Race, Love, and Liberation. His teachings center on freedom, self-expression, and radical self-care. A leading voice in a new generation of Buddhist teachers with over 11 years of experience, Lama Rod activates the intersections of his identity to create a platform that's very natural, engaging, and inclusive. And his new book, The New Saints, From Broken Hearts to Spiritual Warriors, is available for pre-order now. So please enjoy this soulful conversation with Lama Rod Owens. Thinking of starting your own private practice? Join me for a 2-day in-person training, providing what you need to start your own practice on November 9th and 10th in Chicago. The thought of running your own practice can be scary for some, but with a few expert tips, it can be a breeze. This NASW course will provide an overview of what you need to start and maintain a private practice. It will be an action-packed 2 days where you'll learn the business 101s, build your brand, and create a marketing plan. Participants will leave the course with sample forms, actionable next steps to build a thriving business, and 12 CEUs. The cost is $159 for NASW members and $199 for non-members. Visit tinyurl.com/NASW private practice to register. That's tinyurl.com/NASW private practice. Hello, Lama Rod. Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer.
Yay, thank you for having me.
I'm kind of freaking out about this.
Okay.
I'm just really excited.
Why?
I don't know. Well, can I tell you why you're here from my perspective? Like what
Sure.
led us to this for me?
Yeah.
So I teach Master of Social Work students, and it was a Tuesday. I had 2 classes that day. My students were in pain. Like I just soaked in the collective struggle. And I had acupuncture that night at the Heartwood Center. And I walk in and I turn right as soon as I walk in the door and I see the flyer that says Tantric Practices for the End of the World. And I started weeping. And I was like, oh my God, this is what I need. And then I came to see I didn't have plans on a Saturday, which is crazy. And I came to see you and wept through your whole talk. And then I got your book, and I'm just so excited to learn from you and know of you and to get to talk to you today. I just geek out.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You want to know something even funnier?
Yes.
So when I decided to come to Heartwood, I thought that Saturday event was an all-day event. And I didn't realize it was 2 hours until like 30 minutes or an hour before, which is not a big deal for me because I rarely don't know what I'm walking into, you know, and which is how I operate, you know. So I was like, oh, what are going to be the tantric practices for the apocalypse? I was going to do a bunch. And then I settled on what I taught, which was the 7 homecomings practice.
Yeah. Well, it was, I don't know if you saw me crying through the whole thing.
Oh, I did. Yeah.
It was what I needed.
Because you're up front.
Yeah. It was what I needed.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people there, it was what they needed too. So thank you for that medicine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, tell folks about you. Mm-hmm. Wherever you want to start is the right place to start.
Yeah. So I'm Lama Rod. I use he, him pronouns. I am currently living on and practicing on the ancestral lands of the Muskogee, Cherokee, and Creek people here in Atlanta. And this is part of the country I grew up in, North Georgia area. So this feels like, a homeland for me. I identify as cisgender, queer, fat. My branding identifies me as a queen. Now, I didn't actually write that.
Oh, you didn't?
I didn't. No, I don't participate in a lot of things, because I actually don't. It's really interesting. I don't necessarily have the best understanding of how I show up for people. Like, I only know what I feel in the moment and how I feel embodied, and in a really interesting way, I don't feel that interesting.
Yeah.
For people. I don't feel that extreme. I don't feel that radical. I just feel very normal. I'm very normalized in my experience. But when I talk to other people, that's when I get this feedback. So this is why I ask other people to write about me.
That's really smart.
Yeah. A friend of mine had this really great idea. I don't want to put it out there because someone will just take it, but I'm not going to do anything with it. Is that we should create a dating app where your friends write your dating profile.
I love that.
Instead of you.
I had an idea with a client once who had been divorced, and he said there should be a dating app where you list all of your bad qualities, like all of the fucked up things, like I'm divorced, I'm an addict in recovery, I've been to treatment 3 times.
Yep. Real shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Real shit. And then it's your friends who negotiate the first date.
I love that. That's amazing. Let's do it.
So let's just get some money, do it. You know?
I mean, we have nothing else to do.
No, absolutely not. My plate is completely empty. But beyond what I just shared, right, in terms of who I am, I'm, a Buddhist teacher, minister. Particularly, I teach Tantric Buddhism, which for me is a very indigenous-based system of, practice and magic and so forth that is held by an ethical system that wants people, that seeks to liberate people, from the causes and conditions of suffering, and dualism, and to help us to remember who we are beyond all the chaos and the drama. Right. And that's essentially all I do is I try to show up in the world and I try to do my work, right, to reduce the violence that I create for myself and others. And I just help to, show people how to be free, So. Yeah.
And the best way to do that, I'm guessing, is to free yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Work on your own liberation.
Yeah, so many people are so concerned with what everyone else is doing, but we have to bring that energy, that awareness back to ourselves, right? Yeah. And we have to ask ourselves, where's my front line at, right? What's happening for me? Where's my suffering at? And how am I running away from it? And as I run away from it, how do I weaponize it against other people? Because I don't have the capacity to tend to the deep discomfort. So I'm just going to distract myself and try to erase other people who I think are creating the suffering that I'm running away from.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm trying to disrupt that.
Yes.
That kind of habitual kind of reactivity to pain.
Yeah. Yeah. Resma Menakem, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in his somatic abolition 9-month course right now. And it's, I keep saying it's soul work, what he is doing and what you are explaining. And this is where talk about running away from the pain.
what you really helped shine a light on for me that day that I saw you speak, and what I've continued to lean into since then, is like, I do spend a lot of time raging and being angry at everybody out there who's not awake, who's not doing the work. And what I'm not tending to is the sadness and the mourning. That word in particular was what really struck me, because, and that's what I'm learning with Resmaa too, is that especially to be in a white body, knowing that my ancestors participated in harm and then taught me how to harm, there's a deep mourning that white people collectively especially have not tapped into.
Yeah. It's being conditioned into this way of being that's only based on violence and harm and exclusion. And it's heartbreaking to wake up to that, and overwhelming, because how do you even tend to that? Because it's not just you, as you said, right? It's about our ancestors, and as importantly is also about our descendants as well, and the transmission of this level and the continuation of the system, right? And this, and I get it, this is like, it really, you begin to shut down, right? When you look at the immensity of the work. Right. And I just tell people, it's like you have to kind of back and stop looking at the mountain and saying how I'm going to get to the top of this mountain, and start focusing your attention at the base and saying, you know what, it's just going to be one step at a time, one thing at a time, like one piece to metabolize at a time. And the work that you begin is the work really that you will continue, right, through multiple manifestations. So the work that we're doing now, this is an arc that we're working in right now, right? And I have to understand that, like, this is the work that I have now, is the work that I'm doing in this lifetime, right? And it may not get me to the end, but it's getting me further down the path of really getting free.
It's funny because I believe that, and it's so easy for me to disconnect from that. Like, I know, especially personally me, I'm not going to fix this all in this lifetime. But it's just disconnecting from the truth that I know that I've landed in the work that I'm supposed to be doing, and I know that I make a difference. And I guess it is tuning into that. And like you said, looking at just the base, and how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right?
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. Right. And I think this is also why community is extremely important. We need to be surrounded by people who are also doing work, because that's how we get support. That's how we're inspired. That's how we don't feel so isolated and alone in the work. The isolation is really, really going to be a barrier, right? If we don't link our work to collective work of liberation. And again, I think the heart of this work is letting our hearts break, right? And doing the work of grieving, like acknowledging the hurt, acknowledging what has been sacrificed and lost and done, right? And feeling that sadness, And I know people are afraid of that, right? Because we don't think we're going to survive the heartbreak, right?
Well, humans are terrified of feeling.
Especially in the systems that we've been indoctrinated by, which, kind of view feelings as dangerous and uncontrollable.
Well, they're not productive.
They're not productive, right? They don't get us anywhere. They make us more human, but being human isn't productive, is not efficient. Right. And all that efficiency and productivity is really about trying to outrun the suffering. Always, everything that we're doing is about trying to feel better. But what we're doing to bring about feeling better is actually creating the conditions to feel worse and to experience more pain, right? We don't get it, And I think this is why, I'm so grateful for the pain, like for the suffering, and not because I'm, addicted or fixated to the pain, but because I learned how to let it teach me how to be free. I learned how to let it tell me how it wants to be taken care of. Right. And that has helped me come into a really balanced, direct relationship with reality itself.
Yeah.
Where I'm not so afraid of everything like I used to be, because I used to believe that everything was just waiting to hurt me.
Ooh.
You know, like everything, the world was such an antagonist.
Yeah.
And the fear really kept me from actually living and choosing how to be free. Right. So a lot of people, you know, feel really trapped, you know, captive.
Yes.
In many ways, and that captivity creates a victim, right?
Yeah.
And we get really sunk into that victim mentality, and we lose our agency.
Yes.
Like you can't get free from a place of no agency, because freedom is about choice, and which is the risk. You know, like I want, you know, my secret fantasies. Yes, I want a world where everyone just lines up and just do the work. You know, but that's not realistic, because I know the greatest aspect of liberation is always agency and choice, right? It's the greatest gift, is also the greatest risk that we have, because we can always choose what is not conducive to liberation.
Do you exist in that space all of the time? Because I want it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying that every choice that I make is about getting free, you know, but I would say I am aligned. My life is aligned towards liberation, right? So the choices that I'm making, it's like it's being trained, right? And so I've been really working hard to train myself to actually understand what freedom feels like as a physical experience, as a mental experience, as an experience living in a context where maybe I'm not socially free, right? To understand the complexities of what liberation actually means, you know? So I'm trained to be oriented towards that. And sometimes, you know, it's like, I don't want to do that because that's hard right now. I just want to bypass, you know, I just want to distract myself. But I think over time, that choice, when your life is so aligned towards freedom, those choices to bypass actually become really skillful ways to take care of yourself in the moment. You know, because it's hard to go full on 24/7.
Right. Well, there's survival strategies we develop for a reason.
Yeah. Exactly. You know, but it's also important to be very honest and clear, you know, to say, you know what, am I really just being really self-indulgent right now because I'm just like, you know, I'm really attached to pleasure, you know, or something that feels really good right now, you know? And I think it's okay to kind of wander in these spaces. I practice, again, Tantric Buddhism. Tantra really, it goes into everything, including pleasure. So pleasure becomes a doorway to freedom, because we can embrace pleasure, but we don't have to be fixated on it. It's just an experience, right?
Embrace versus grasp.
Yeah. Exactly. Holding, you know, I can hold an experience and say, oh, this is wonderful. And that kind of orientation helps to direct me deeper into the essence of not just pleasure, but all experiences, you know? So in general, I guess, and overall, I would say, yeah, everything is really aligned towards liberation. And I can feel when I'm not making a choice that's about getting free, that I'm making a choice maybe to hurt and harm, you know, or I'm making a choice to distract myself, you know, and not have a clear decision about how I'm relating to something, you know? So yeah, man, this is 20 years of practice right now, you know, for me doing this.
And I think about, I mean, I've been preaching to the listeners about meditation since I think I'm 8 years into daily meditation, and it changed my life instantly. Like instantly, I felt a reduction of anxiety on like a very palpable level. I mean, is that just it? Because I hear you talking about a very fine level of awareness.
Yeah.
Right. And to have that mindfulness, that's the muscle that you're sort of working, right? Is meditation.
Yeah. And that's incredibly important. Like you can't get free without knowing. It's not so much about understanding, but knowing, seeing, becoming aware.
Right.
Like I have to know what to divest from and what to invest in, right? And I have to develop this deep sensitivity to what, freedom really actually feels like.
Right.
Right. Not just this over romanticized experience, but just like what is actually being free feel like, And I have to use this primary technology in meditation, which of course is terrifying because it's really at the end of the day about coming home to yourself, right? And learning how to hold space for yourself, which is another way of saying how do we care for ourselves, tend to ourselves by allowing ourselves to be, right? And when we allow ourselves to be, then we can look and say, you know what, there's an aspect of how I'm showing up that I would like to change, to strengthen, to tend to, right? And again, that's always heartbreaking work because it's challenging who we think we are,
right,
at the same time. So you're becoming a different person, but that different person is a more fluid, liberated person, which may look very different than who you thought you were at the very beginning, right? And this is also very challenging for the people around us because people around us depend on us remaining the same, super static and solid, because that's how they build their identity and their sense of self.
Yes.
So when we change, we disrupt them. And so in that disruption, they begin to weaponize their discomfort against us. And this happens so much in my life that I just expect it. When I change, I know that people are going to feel a certain way because they have expectations about who and what I am. Now, I would also say this, that at this point in my life, people are just expecting me to change, and particularly the people who love you, really love you, who want you to be safe and free and happy. They may not understand what you're doing, but they allow you to make these choices, right? Particularly if you have a track record of making choices that tend to work out in the long run, right?
That's true.
There's a trust. So I tell people all the time, it's like, I don't want people around me who are just projecting their fear on me, because that's not going to stop me. That's actually not going to faze me at all, because I'm so in tune to what I need to do to get free. My ethic is so strong at this point, that it's no longer personal in that way.
Right.
Like, my choice to be free is not a judgment against you.
Right.
It only feels like a judgment because you haven't done that same level of work for yourself. But also, I become a mirror for people, inviting folks to do that work. So friends and family who have definitely made different choices because they've seen me make these choices, right, in my own life.
I resonate with that too. I mean, you can tell what I look like, and the listeners certainly know too. Yeah. I mean, it seems like a silly choice, right? To look whatever way it is that you want to look. And for you as a Black man, literally just existing in that body is so threatening to people that it's, I mean, I went to a conference this weekend and I constantly hear, oh, I wish I could do something like that with my hair, but either I'm not brave enough or I have to look professional, right? Like all of these things. And I'm sad every time I hear that, because I think you are in prison. I'm just coloring my hair. This is not a radical act, but it is.
No, I get that. I used to get that quite often, and still do to an extent. Like, oh, why do you get to do what you do? Like, or, why do you get to have these experiences? Why do you have the life that you have? And I say, because I made the choice, like when I was in my early 20s, right? Coming out of college. And I remember having this experience towards graduation where I was like, I don't want to just like graduate and settle down, and buy a house and just get into that path. Like, I want so much more for my life. Like, I didn't say this at the time, but what I was actually trying to articulate was that I just want to be free.
Yeah.
I want to be fluid. Yes, and I show up in a particular way. I'm a Black queer man, a big Black queer man, right? And I know how I present to people, right? And I still choose to be free because we all have work to do, right? And that work is about choosing how to really to be in the world that's not so conditioned by fear and anxiety, which is trauma, right?
And that scares the shit out of people.
Yeah.
To not exist in fear.
Because we're so self-identified. Yeah. We're so self-identified with trauma and fear. That's who we are. And to say, you know what, actually, that's not who I am. I'm not this contraction and tension. I'm actually an expression of space, right? As we would say in Tantric Buddhism, to choose space means that, like, again, I have to do this intense emotional labor of figuring out who I am beyond the ways in which I have been created by society and culture and systems and institutions, right? To say, yeah, like, I know what's being projected into my body, and I choose to no longer identify with those projections and to live beyond, right? And there are so many communities that taught me how to do that, early in my 20s, right? When I made that decision not to settle, but to continue to grow and travel and everything, the transgender community and the gender nonconforming community was the first community that really started embracing me. This is, late 90s, early 2000s, right? And it was a jolt to come into spaces, and to say, how do you choose to identify? When the first time I was ever asked my pronouns, I was
in the late 90s. Wow.
Well, this was probably early 2000s by now, but like the first time I was like, I can't even describe the experience. It was like someone like opened the cell door.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, like I don't have to just like abide by other people's expectations anymore.
I get to choose.
Yeah, I get to choose. And I was like, I don't know. I don't, like it just took me a moment because no one ever asked me, nor did I ever think about it. Right.
Right.
But that for me is such a fundamental experience because so many of us don't even believe we have a choice, and I just was like, I have a choice. And it's not about other people, it's about me, right? It's about me and my life and this body and how I'm trying to be in the world in a way where I'm not just projecting the same old kinds of suffering and violence against everyone because I'm so in so much pain that I can't deal with it. So a lot of what I do feels extreme, from multi-year retreats in silence, to plant medicine work, to just to like how I study and read and engage. Yeah. And I can like, you see me on the street. Yeah. I may seem like, my hair isn't colored or like, but what I often tell people, for my practice is that like, it doesn't matter how I look, it's about how I feel. It's like I may not look particularly gender fluid, but I feel extremely fluid in how I move through the world, right? And that's where I want everyone to be. It's just like it's not about how you're looking, how you're showing up, it's about how you feel.
Yeah.
And I want us to really kind of understand that because we make a lot of assumptions about how people are showing up in the world by just looking at them and saying, oh, this person. I have been extremely shocked and surprised, because I made assumptions about people and I'm letting those assumptions go. And I'm just like holding space and just saying, however you show up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I just want anyone listening to this to really start this work of saying, what are the choices that I need to make to feel free, And when I say free, the tangible experiences of freedom is fluidity, Like, do I feel like I have space to move, to change, to make different choices, right? Do I have the agency to think differently now? Where am I just making people comfortable? Like, where are the places in my life where I just kind of give away my agency and say, you know what, I'm just going to make someone nice and comfortable? And like, how do I start taking that agency back and saying, you know what, I want to center more of my needs? And of course, the most powerful question that we can ask in our pursuit of freedom is asking ourselves what I need. And that's the hard question. Like, because many of us don't know what we need. You know? Like, we're so busy.
And sometimes we think we know, and it's not the right path.
Exactly. You know, there's a big difference between needs and wants. Like, I want a lot of things. I want $1 million. Right? Like, do I need it though? When I say need, is this going to get me free? Is this going to reduce harm and violence? You know, does this meet my basic, you know, needs in terms of surviving and living in the world? Like, this is what I mean by needs. And fun and pleasure is a need. A lot of people think they're having fun, but they're really not. There's just kind of a performance.
Yes.
You know, like when we tap into real transformative pleasure, it changes us.
What is her name? Kai Chen Tom? Is that her name? Does that sound familiar to you?
No, I don't think so.
She is a trans, and she calls herself a pleasure activist. And Kai Chen Tom, that's right. And I went to her workshop, and I was so uncomfortable and found myself recognizing how. And I think it's definitely my Christian upbringing that pleasure is the devil, right? And like that's not how I think. But that's been woven into me, and how scary it is to really allow oneself to embrace, like you said, pleasure.
Yeah, I completely identify, you know, having grown up Christian as well in the South, and how pleasure was something that had so much shame around it. You know, how dare I experience pleasure? You know, and then of course, right, being like conditioned in patriarchy as a cisgender man, you know, although at the intersections of other, you know, identity locations of disprivilege, but like that basic kind of conditioning in patriarchy that says that like my pleasure as a man, right, is central to everything, you know, in the
and
world.
Your comfort.
But then, and comfort, right? And then realizing that it was never about pleasure at all. Like,
it's about power.
It was about power.
Sorry, I don't mean to finish your sentences.
No. Like power, it's about authority. It's about being distant. And that's confused as pleasurable. But for me, pleasure is being vulnerable. It's being open, it's being intimate with others, it's sharing power, it's being in power with, it's naming myself, right? Not letting systems name me, but naming myself in the world and saying, this is who I am, you know, to feel this kind of fundamental closeness with people. Right, which is always what I'm working on. Like that's part of my front lines work. It's like I want to be closer to people. I want to be more open-hearted. I want to be more loving. I want to be kind. I don't want to be shut down by the fear or belief that I should be dominating spaces or relationships. Right, you know, and I know that like vulnerability is hard for us because we don't want to feel at risk. And, you know, there's a really complex practice there of like really working to open into vulnerability, but also to maintain boundaries and to be clear about how do I maintain a sense of safety as I'm opening at the same time, you know, in the world. Right. And that's what I'm working on right now. That's always something that's up for me.
Right. Well, and that's where meditation becomes important, because to slow down and have awareness, then you can create discernment.
Yeah. But you have to, you know, you have to be really dedicated to the practice. And for me, I hated meditation when I started. I'll just be, it was just very clear. Like, it wasn't like an assumption. I literally hated meditation. I would try to meditate. I would go for a minute and I would just be overwhelmed because when I turned my attention back to myself, there was mountains of pain. Yeah. Right. And I was like, oh, this isn't safe. This cannot be safe for me. But I kept coming back over and over and over again because I learned how to experience. I learned to let my heart break, and the breaking of the heartbreaking has to happen over and over and over and over again. My heart breaks every day. And it's okay. It's not so extraordinary anymore. Yeah. Right. Because that allowing my heart to break is really about allowing myself to return back to intimacy, to return back to a clarity and relationship with the world as it is, right? To continually connect to the struggle of the world and the struggle of myself to be in relationship to the world, which I'm a part of. I'm a part of the violence of the world. Like, I've participated, and still participate in many ways, right? That's all heartbreaking, and it's okay because that's where we have to start. We have to start with the heartbreak in order to figure out how to change, right? But, again, just reinforcing, as you've reinforced so many times, is that, you have to come back to awareness. And meditation is that training in awareness, right? And it's supposed to be hard. Like if it were easy, everyone would be doing it, and we wouldn't be in this situation. But this isn't. Self-awareness and liberation is the hardest work we will ever do, right? So we have to just expect it's going to be hard. Again, this is why community is really important. This is why teachers and mentors and guides are incredibly important in my system of practice, right? Because we need the support. We need, I am only here because I was trained by people who had embodied, right, the fruition of deep awareness and care for themselves. Like, I wouldn't have believed this was possible if it were not for teachers who showed up. And I said, oh, how did they get like this? Because that's where I need to be.
Well, and that makes me think of families, right? How can, I work with, parents of young children, and they're like, okay, how do I fix my kid? And I'm like, fix yourself. Like, you're here. And to be, and I've got one client and she's told me I can, share little pieces of her story, but her mother had borderline personality disorder. And so she was raised in this really emotionally abusive household, and she's a mother, and my God, is she a good mother? Because she knows that she just needs to talk and listen to her kid. Exactly. And let whatever his feelings are be okay.
And how many of us never got that,
right?
Growing up, the space to be, childhood becomes yet another expression of slavery and dominance and control, right? Where we're not, allowed to be playful because parents and guardians actually don't have the capacity to experience that kind of playful fluidity because they never got that.
Yes.
Right. And so you have people having kids and exerting this level of authority, on these kids in themselves, training another generation of authoritarians.
Have you seen Shiny Happy People?
Oh my God.
Horrifying.
Are you kidding me? I am in the middle of watching that. That was what I was watching before I tuned into to this podcast. Like, this is like, I just kind of got up this morning and was checking some stuff, and the ad was just, TikTok. Everyone was like, it was on my TikTok feed. I was like, because I never watched the show.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I didn't really follow it that much, and all the controversy, but I just started watching it now, and I was like, yeah, absolutely.
They're
like
literally training people to be submissive, but then the men to try to take over and dominate. So everybody go to Prime and watch it. It's horrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's happening in so many parts of society. Like, again, like, you know, I would say it's amazing when you start really talking to people and talking with friends, how many of us grew up in communities like this that are, still very invisible. Right. you know, but like this indoctrinating that like, there's a hierarchy here and I don't have rights. Right. And of course, this impacts, children, women, right? Queer folks, trans folks the most. Like we and that hierarchy goes up, right? And God is the ultimate authoritarian.
And the one who God speaks to, the only one.
Yeah. Which I'm, really tired of. My next book is coming out in October, The New Saints.
Ooh.
And I really was like, I have got to disrupt this God as the authoritarian father, right?
Yeah.
And so I do a lot of work in the book to really like deconstruct how I understand God, not as an authoritarian, but as an expression of space, right? That's inviting me back into fluidity and freedom, and openness, right? It's God, my love of God is actually just a deep love and gratitude for the essence of all phenomena, which is like free and empty and open, right? That's my understanding of God. But when God becomes the authoritarian father, we're screwed, and we have been screwed, and we will continue to be screwed until we actually start disrupting that for ourselves, But it's so easy. Like it's easy to let go of our agency and to have others make decisions for us. It's hard. Like, as I was saying earlier, it's just like this choice. Yeah, like the choice and the agency is hard work. Right? Because I'm having to take responsibility for myself. I'm having to know and understand who and what I am.
Yeah, well, it's harder to discern what's actually right for yourself than it is to follow some laws that quote unquote God has put upon you, like wearing skirts and your hair in a certain way. And
it's like, this is what I have. I have these two choices every day. I'm going to do that. I don't have to think about it, right? I don't have to push up against a community or a system or institution. I just follow the laws, the rules, and I'm happy, right? But then, this is what I always say, but what happens when you begin to transition out of this life?
Right.
And, I've been very fortunate to be trained as a chaplain, and to really sit with people at the end of their life. And I understand now, like, there's a deep, tremendous, profound gift that we get from the dying, which is this really radical reflection about what life has been, and what life has meant. And I just tell people, it's like, and this is what I do. At the moment of my death, what will I regret? And everyone I've sat with have always said that, like, I regret not doing what I needed to do to be free, to really experience happiness, right? To love in a really open, fluid way. So I make those choices every day now. Yeah, I just kind of look, like you, I think that I just kind of move through the world. I'm working with people, primarily as a spiritual guide, spiritual director, and chaplain. And my compassion for people, right, is wanting them to reduce suffering and to reduce harm. And I see all the choices that they make to repress these really important parts of who they are, right? Because of the fear, because of the shame, right? Which is an expression of fear, right?
Right.
I think what we're trying to do is to embody what expressions of freedom look like,
Yeah.
Like, it's not so much just preaching and teaching, but it's actually just showing up and saying, this is what this looks like. Being.
Right.
That's how I learn.
Yeah.
Like, again, I wouldn't be here if I didn't see people really just embodying what this looks like. And I'm like, okay, like, if you did it, I can try, right? I can give it my best try.
And that is so important for any therapists listening right now. I just want you to recognize, again, your work is just like a parent to a child, a therapist to a client, just being authentic, being embodied, being connected to your liberation, that helps clients without any modalities.
Yeah, absolutely. To feel that, like to see it and to feel someone practicing freedom. I mean, I again, like those are the strongest examples that I have in my life, right? And I just hope that I become that for folks as well.
I'm sure you are already.
You know, like a lot of things I've done, like, you know, I was raised in a smallish town in North Georgia, you know, so about an hour, you know, and some change north of Atlanta, where I'm currently living. And just a side note, it's the same hometown that Marjorie Taylor Greene represents as well. So that gives you some context as to where I grew up, around people who would elect someone like her, you know? You know, I grew up in that community, and I was, you know, everything was so prescribed for me as a Black Southern person. Like often, you know, I got the feedback that, oh, well, you know, Black people don't do this. Of course, also boys don't do this, and Christians don't do this, you know, and all this stuff, right? And I just felt like that was fundamentally like counterintuitive.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what, this is, you know, as I was saying earlier, I decided to leave the South and to like experience the world because I knew there was something else that I needed to do, right? There was something else that I was trying to become. And I took that risk.
Yeah.
Because when you're doing the work of becoming or getting free or getting clear is nothing but risk, because there are things that you will have to let go of. There are things that you will lose, including relationships, especially relationships, but also things and status, you know, and other resources, right? Because, you know, freedom isn't free. You know? Like you just don't wake up and say, I'm going to be free. There's labor and offering that has to go into this, right? And again, that can be heartbreaking. But you even offer the heartbreak to the work, right? The heartbreak of becoming who you need to be, right? In this life.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we're coming close to the end of our time. I mean, I could listen to you talk. I'll just keep you in my ears forever. But I didn't ask you yet, how do you feel about the term wounded healer as applied to you?
Yeah. Well, I think that's really important because my woundedness is how I teach.
Yeah.
Right. You know, I remember a well-known Buddhist teacher named Pema Chodron, who is a nun up in Canada. But, you know, she's, you know, her books have been so fundamental for many practitioners who aren't even Buddhists. They're just people who need really good life advice, right?
Yes.
She's incredible. And she talks about how our hearts, you know, have to stay open, but it's when our hearts are open, it feels like a wound. Like, and that wound stays sensitive to the world, right? You know, and so it's not that our hearts just scab over and start healing, as our wounds stay active and open and sensitive and tender, and that keeps us connected to the world. And that's where I want to be. And what that translates into is simply that, like, I want to stay connected to my suffering. I want to stay connected to my work, right? I never want to think that I'm perfect, right? Because perfection is, you know, an expression of white supremacy and patriarchy. And that, you know, that performance of perfection is just another way that we create hierarchy, you know, and we create these ways of caring for people that are just really based on pity.
Yes.
You
Bless
know?
your heart.
And that's just, bless your heart. That's right. Bless your heart, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you poor thing. That sucks for you. You know, I'm going to be praying for you as if I don't have shit going on, right?
Right.
You know?
Right.
So it's like when we practice like that with that kind of open-heartedness, that tender kind of heartedness, it's keeping us with people. It's like, it's not just you and me suffering, we're suffering.
Right.
We're struggling to be better, right? we're struggling to reduce harm. Like we will always have work to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, thank you. Feels like I got a sermon today in the best way, in a good way, not in a preachy way. But where can folks find you?
Yeah, my website, lamarod.com. And then, on social media, Instagram is Lama Rod Official, one word. And then you can get, from my website, you can, get all my social media handles as well. My newsletter is really great to have, and you can sign up for my newsletter on my website. And and I'm preparing to launch the pre-sale of my next book.
Oh, great. Good.
Coming out in October, called The New Saint. And it is really everything really that we've talked about.
Awesome.
In this hour is really reflected in the book, particularly, everything about God and everything. But it's really a book about, what it means to be good, right? Like not just a performative goodness, but a goodness that's really about liberation, right? And asking really tough questions about where we are right now in the world and what is our work, right? To bring about a liberated future, and this is all based in, meditation, and other kinds of practices as well. So you get my philosophy, you also get the practices to support. This is always what I do in my, in my books, is offer practice for folks to get involved with.
Amazing. Yeah. And I hope you'll come back to Chicagoland soon.
Absolutely. Well, I will definitely be there for a book event in the fall.
Okay, great. Then I will be there with my copy, ready to get a signature and a big old hug.
Yay. I look forward to that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. This has just been tremendous.
Absolutely.
Thanks to our guest for an amazing conversation today. To find out more about today's guest, you can visit www.headheartbiztherapy.com/podcast.
You can find Sarah at Head Heart Biz Therapy on Facebook and Instagram.
And you can find Anne at Spare Room Wellness or spareroomwellness.com.
Thanks as always to Andrea Klunder and the Creative Imposter Studios for editing, to Liam O'Donnell for the album art, and to Ben Mueller for our theme music. Until next time, bye-bye.